Right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this webinar on design thinking. I'm your facilitator today. My name is Michael Niles, and I'll be taking you through the next kind of 35, 40 minutes of this fascinating area. So welcome. We're going to talk about this design thinking, many pros and cons. Are going on in our lives at the minute. Many of us, myself included, I'm sure many of you, have found our lives somewhat disrupted over the last 5 or 6 weeks with the lockdown happening and our businesses going through rapid need for change. And design thinking is one of the ways of addressing some of those problems. It's a clear framework, it's a structured framework, and as with an awful lot of these frameworks that we might have never heard of before, once you start looking into them, in many cases you'll start thinking, oh God, I do that already. It's one of those things that once it's pointed out to you is quite obvious, and actually much of which you might already be implementing within your businesses, maybe consciously because you've heard of design thinking, or unconsciously anyway. But I would like to introduce to you our moderators. So I'm just going to pop the slides down here. So Ella is the moderator today. So say hello, Ella. I don't know which side of me she is, so I'll point in all directions. Ella will be managing the chat, the questions, and the poll function, which we're going to have a little talk about in just a second. And you're going to have a little bit of an interactive time. So this is not just me barking at slides for 40 minutes. We will want you to be involved and be using the chat functions and all those things as well. So some of the ground rules: we want you to submit questions. Now, we're not taking questions during the briefing. There's going to be a Q&A session at the end. But if you have a look to the right-hand side, again, I'm not sure which side it is, whether I'm flipped, but there is on the right side of your screens a chat function. You will see that there is chat, questions, polls. Now, chat is for general chatting to each other, and I will ask you to put some stuff in chat as we go along. Questions is where I would like you to put, funnily enough, any questions that you have. So pop a question as we go through, and we can pick out some of them to answer in the Q&A. Depending on how many they are, we might not get through all of them. But if you see a question already on there that you would like to ask, the same questions you're going to ask, you can upvote it so we can have a look at the most popular questions and address them. And there is a poll. We will be doing a poll in a little while. Just click on that thing and you can upvote, and we can get a sense of where you are with things. So without further ado, let's have a little look at this whole idea of, have a look at who Upskill Digital are, the people who are hosting this. Some of you may well have been on the seminars already, in which case, welcome back. If you're new to this, welcome. Upskill Digital are an education transformation agency providing tailored programs and topics for your workforces around digital actualization, digital skills. So what we're finding particularly now is that digital transformation is accelerating rapidly. Now, it's something that was happening, but now it's having to happen much quicker because we're at home, we're remote working, and suddenly we're Zooming, and suddenly we are on Microsoft Teams, and we're doing all sorts of things that we didn't do before. This is the 6th different webinar system I have used in the last 5 weeks, for instance. We're having to adapt incredibly quickly. And one of the things that Upskill Digital is there to do is to help your organization adapt, to understand digital tools, to understand digital skills, and make sure that your business and your workforce are able to transform and grow in what is an incredibly interesting but slightly stressful period of time. So again, these webinars and the other courses that are available to you, either bespoke ones that you might want to engage Upskill for, or off-the-shelf courses, are designed to help you access technology in a way that is going to help you communicate better and help your business grow, move forward, and keep up in this incredibly transformative period of time. Now, this is a global thing as well. We've got 204 different trainers working across the globe, and they can create courses for you in your local languages, in English, no matter where you are and no matter what is going on in your business at the moment. So if you have any questions about that, any interest, there'll be some contact details that will be going into the chat as we go through. Please feel free to engage with us. We'd love to hear from you, and most importantly, we'd love to help you. So What are we going to be covering over the next kind of 40 minutes or so? Well, it is about design thinking. We're not going to be able to cover all elements of design thinking because it is a huge topic. We're going to talk about what it is, and then we're going to focus on one specific element of design thinking, which is empathy. And right now, to be honest with you, empathy is probably the most critical thing that we have to think about. Lots of change, lots of people finding this difficult. So empathy is going to be so important in moving our businesses forward. So how to use empathy to your advantage. And then wrapping up with the other steps of design thinking, just to kind of whet your appetite so you know where to go next. But I think empathy is a critical one to be focusing on in the current situation. We'll be asking you for some feedback. So there will be a link to a feedback form at the end of the presentation. And then whilst you're filling that in, we will go through the Q&A section and try to answer any questions you have, wrapping up somewhere between 3:45 and 3:50 ultimately. So please enjoy, be interactive. Thank you very much for attending. And without further ado, we will crack on. So, which of these, and this is a poll, so you're going to have to go to the chat on the right-hand side and the poll button. Ella's going to put a poll up in a moment. Which of these best describes your current understanding of design thinking right now? Number one, design thinking, I invented it, mate. In which case, I will switch over, invite you to the stage, and you can take over. I know what design marketing is, and I use it regularly. I know what it is, but I don't use it. I know what it is, but I don't think it's relevant to me, which hopefully we can convince you of otherwise. I don't know what it is, but I'd like to learn more. And I thought this was my 3 p.m. with the head of finance. Well, if that is the case, finance is loss, our gain, hang around, and hopefully it's something you'll find really useful. So can you go to the polls and just give us a little bit of here we go, going to the polls. So, and submit your vote. So you tick into one of them and hit submit vote. So let's see what we have happening. I will put the top one.
It's so exciting. It's so cool.
Here we go.
To see it live. The results are coming in.
Yeah, here we go. So I think that's me at the top, that 10%. We've got 20% who know what it is and use it regularly, which is fantastic. Know what it is, but don't use it. Sort of know what it is, but not relevant to me. But actually, the vast majority of us, no one has mistaken this for their finance meeting, which is good. That is great. But the majority of you don't know what it is, but like to learn more, which is fantastic. So 67%. So that's fabulous. Okay, great. So hopefully we can take that away. You can start thinking about how to use it more effectively in your businesses. And I bet you as we go through, as I talk about the theory and certainly talk about the focus thing, that 67% who go, I don't know what it is, but like to learn more, will begin to go, oh, actually, this happened to me. I was asked to do a course on critical thinking last year and I had no idea what critical thinking was, but I said yes and did the research, so I'd be prepared. And as soon as I started looking at critical thinking, I went, oh, it's what I've been doing for all of these years. I just didn't know it was called critical thinking. I think some of those 67% there, as we go through, we'll get to the point where you're going, oh, right, okay, it's called design, right? Okay, design thinking, I get it. It's what I've been doing, or part of what I've been doing for a very long time. So I'm switching between slides here. So what is design thinking and why is it important currently? Well, it's about creative problem solving. You know, if you can go to Google and you can Google design thinking, you'll come up with all sorts of jargony stuff. I did it the other day in preparation for this and thought, but it's about creative problem solving. And it is very much borrowing from designers. It's the people who will design things. I'll go through very similar processes to that. And it's kind of borrowing that methodology and applying it to other problems. But it can be applied to completely non-creative sectors. I first came across design thinking about 3 years ago, where I was put in a working party with a company or organization I was working with to come up with a new appraisal system for them. And we used this methodology to come up with a new, vibrant, interesting, engaging appraisal system for the organization that I work for. Lots of people from lots of different backgrounds coming together and using this methodology to come up with a sustainable appraisal system that was more than just ticking boxes. So you have the word design in it. Don't let that put you off, and don't let the word creativity put you off as well. I'll talk more about what I think there in a moment. But you can use these principles across all sorts of things. And the critical thing, particularly where we are right now, in this really weird situation we find ourselves with working from home and social distancing and all that kind of stuff, it's about people. It is about people. It's centered around interactivity, inclusivity, and understanding, and bringing those in together to create a very, very strong product and a very strong solution to a problem. So don't immediately think just because it says design in it, just because we say creative, that it's not something that you can engage with. It absolutely is. Right, so what it is versus what it isn't. So it is inclusive. This is one of the critical elements of design thinking, that it either includes the entire business or it's going to include a small group of people who are focused on a task. It's about innovation. It's about sparking ideas. So there needs to be a freedom to it. And so we'll touch upon that a little bit later. It's about turning failure into insult. I'm a great fan of failure. I think failure is something that we don't embrace enough. And the best businesses that I've worked for have been ones that embrace failure. They see failure as a way to move forward. Now, I had a fabulous manager a few years ago. I'd come up with the wackiest and wildest of ideas, and she'd say, go for it. And if it fell on its face, it would be a case of, well, what have you learned? Where can we go? Where can we move forward? And some of those failures moved on to create incredibly powerful things. And Thomas Edison, when he was quizzed about the light bulb, Thomas Edison quote here, there was lots of failures before he got the light bulb. And he said, he was asked, how do you cope with all those failures? And the quote was, they weren't failures. There were just 10,000 ways that it didn't work. So, went through these 10,000 different iterations that didn't work, that ultimately got him the light bulb. And if he'd stopped at 9,999, we'd still be burning candles right now. So, the failure is something that we need to embrace and turn into something that is positive. And it is about being empathetic. It is about people. Very important. And the empathy element is what we're going to be talking about principally today. What it isn't just for creative people. It's not just for the big tech industries. It's relevant to anyone who wants to use it to increase productivity, to solve problems, and to get engagement with their team, but also with their clients as well. Nor is this something that's brand new. It's a real buzz at the moment. Everyone's talking about it, but actually, like I've said, you probably go through this, and many of you will go, I've been doing this kind of thing for years. Maybe not exactly as it stands within design thinking, but you've been doing it for a very, very long time. So I'm just going to make me big again. What we want to do next is to get you to do a little creative exercise. So we're asking you to engage here. We're going to use the chat function. And what we're going to talk about, and this is, I've done creativity training in the past, actually, it's great fun. I do this with a bit of paper rather than with a paper clip. But what we want you to do is to go to the chat. Don't hit go yet, but go to the chat. And what I would like you to do is to come up with different ways that you could possibly use a paper clip that is not clipping paper together. So whatever you think it might be, and it can be wild or wacky. The critical thing about this is it doesn't matter how silly it is. It doesn't matter how mad it is. Just whatever comes to your mind, shove it out there. It could be very practical and sensible, or it could be something that is completely wacky. Doesn't matter. No one is going to criticize anyone. And that is a very important thing that I'll come to later on. So if you could just go into the chat function and type something in. And when I say go, some of you had. When I say go, well, just go, because some of you already done it. So keep a hand grenade together. I love that one. Thank you very much. Reset a sat nav. I use that for my PlayStation 4 controller, a little reset button to stop the drift on the analog sticks. Earrings, beautiful earrings, particularly the colors you can see there. They can go with any particular outfit you've got. Keeping socks together. Absolutely, because the sock monster does like eating your socks when you are putting through the washing machine. Making holes in homemade crumpets. Now I'm hungry. Thanks for that. Absolutely hungry. That's crumpets. When I finally get to Tesco this week, crumpets are happening. To make a necklace, to clean a keyboard, lick the corners and fold the end. I'm not sure what that's all about, but it sounds very intriguing. Help you with a zip on the back. Yeah, well, I mean, it happens to me all the time. Fantastic. Any more? My railway modelling, fantastic. Absolutely. I remember I loved my Hornby set when I was a kid. Glasses frame. Let's grab one more I've got. Use them instead of money. Yeah, absolutely. And open the SIM card on an iPhone. Yeah. So many, and the thing is, there are some sensible ideas in there, like the zip one. There are completely picking pomegranate pips. I love your thinking. Now let's kind of veer away from food now because it's way too close for lunch, and I'm working from the dining table. You know, my office is now the dining table, so I associate this with food, which makes it very, very difficult for me. But thank you very much. So you can see that this is one of the fundamentals of design thinking. Is zoom me, make me small again. No, that's maybe even bigger. What is that? There we go. That's what we want to see. One of the things about design thinking is not being afraid. You know, the ideas, it's the good and the bad and the ugly of the ideas. You have to be open-minded. Open-minded is important because minds are very much like parachutes. They work best when they are open. It's one of my favorite little sayings. I love that one. We need an open mind. We need to accept people's ideas, no matter how mad or weird they might be. Here are some of the large organizations that will be using design thinking, you know, and just because large organizations use it doesn't mean to say that smaller organizations can't adopt the same types of methodology. So it's a framework that is adaptable enough to apply it to almost anything. You could use it in your own life, at home, projects that you're doing yourself, work, growing your business. You know, it could be creating innovation. It could be rapid prototyping. You know, that's one of the things. Ideation is one of the parts of design thinking, which is when we come up with prototypes, things that we can use. So that's generally what design thinking is about. And let's have a look at what it is specifically. And the thing I like about this is it's a circle. I'm not someone who's a straight line thinker. I am someone who thinks in a very wiggly way. And I've always preferred, in coaching models, I preferred grow to smart, for instance, because grow is a loop that comes back on itself. And the thing about design thinking, it's a wheel. And the great thing is that the more you turn the wheel, the faster it spins. And the more you get used to this, the more ideas come out. And you will find that actually something like design thinking is a great way to gain momentum and great way to get forward motion. Yes, you can have a fixed point you're heading towards, but it's the spinning of the wheel that's going to do it. The empathize, that's the bit we're going to look at mainly today, is about understanding the root of the problem and engaging people in the right way. Then once you've done that and you've understood the crux of the problem, you define where you're going to go next, what particular elements you're going to focus on. Then you ideate, so you start brainstorming and brain dumping ideas about how we can address this defined problem, this defined challenge that we have. Then you create prototypes, so you're looking at you know, your minimal viable product, so you come up with something that works, that is going to work, and then you can test it and you can evolve. And the thing is, you come straight back then to the beginning. You get back to the empathize, you look at what you've got and you can move it forward. You've tested it, it works. What about it worked? What about it didn't work? The bits that didn't work, let's go and have a look at the problem. Let's define what went wrong. Let's ideate how we improve it. Let's do a prototype, let's test. And you've got this fantastic cycle that just moves forward all the time. Now your business and your ideas and your processes grow in a beautifully organic way and in a way that is focused on solving problems within the business. So it is absolutely phenomenal. So it is about overcoming personal biases. It's about providing a structure to the innovation process. Innovation is phenomenal. Imagination is incredible. It's the thing that defines us as human beings. So that was getting a bit deep. Empathize is the first element, and that's what we're going to be talking about over the next little while. So what I want to talk about, particularly empathy, is something that I'm a trainer. I'm a full-time freelance trainer, and I used to be a manager. I worked for large organizations managing teams. And the one thing that ultimately made me leave management is that back in the early 2000s, I left in 2008, management, is that it was stick, not carrots. It wasn't about empathy. It was about results. and it never sat well with me. I never quite understood why management didn't sit with me, because back then that's not, I wanted to be able to develop people. And empathy is so important, particularly now, is if we're working with teams, those teams are fractured, they're all over the place, they're working from their dining room tables, they're working for their bedrooms, they are in situations they never found themselves in before. So empathy is incredibly important for us to be able to come back together as a team and work forward, and also understanding what those problems are and how we can face them. So I'm going to make that bigger. Empathy is about function over form. It's a lot. I do actually really like this quote. We spend a lot of time designing the bridge, but we don't think about the people who are crossing it. And a very modern example of this is the Millennium Bridge in London. When that opened in 2000, it looked amazing, and you can still, I mean, it's still there, and it is an incredible structure, very impressive structure. It's a footbridge. When they opened it on the day, it wobbled a lot. It moved around. People walking across it were finding it quite difficult to get from one side to the other safely, so they had to close it and redesign it, because it was designed to look cool. It wasn't designed to be functional. So empathy is about thinking people first, function second. So I love this quote. And it's about identifying a pain point within your business or for your customers and generating ideas that will to figure out what that pain point is and be able to explode it and do things with it. So this is quite interesting. When I saw the notes here, I suddenly got my heckles went up, because there was something I disagreed with. And the more I thought about it, I realized actually I didn't. But it was about problems, the fact that we spend too much time on solutions and not time on problems, and my brain is automatically in solution mode. I'm a solution focused person, but when I started reading this, I started thinking, actually, that's potentially a problem from my perspective, because as soon as a problem or a challenge arises, I go straight into solutions without actually looking deeply enough into the problem. So we need to look at the problem without trying to solve it initially. Obviously, the solution is what we want to get, but we need to put solutions to a side until we understand the problem and we become an expert in that problem. That is really important. So I just want to ask you, pop into the chat again. Who thinks it sounds really hard to become an expert in a problem without actually trying to solve it? Just give me a quick yes or a no in the chat. Those people who think it is easy to solve a problem without going straight into solutions, or the people who immediately want to solve it. So yes, it is easy. You've got one. No, we got one here as well. Yeah, I've got an example. Electron personal transport sounds excellent. Drive along the HGV2 but I plastic cart, not so much. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, so some people do. It is difficult. I think there are people who are better at this than others. I'm not. I will admit that I sometimes do go straight into solution without actually considering problem. This is something that I will do. Now, why do you think, those of you who have put no in, and those of you who put yes, but might know people who would put the no bit in, what do you think are the barriers? Just quickly pop into the chat the barriers you think that might come up and prevent you from focusing on the problem before hitting that solution. Yeah, it doesn't sound easy to not think about problems through the framework of a solution. Absolutely, yeah. Pressure of deadlines, absolutely, in time constraints. Perfect, yeah, that's right. Time, it's creating time for these things. Absolutely, time is finite, you have to put it. Brilliant. Your viewpoint might be quite narrow. Absolutely. We're going to explore that later on. Thank you for that one. I don't see people's names here, so I can't call you out. Ideas appreciation. Yes. And I do want to talk about this a little bit later on as well. People not appreciating your ideas. You want to be able to have an answer if you can't diagnose the problem. Yeah, you won't be able to have an answer if you can't diagnose the problem. Absolutely. Not be suitable for you now, but needs to be considered. No solution available immediately. Unconscious bias. Do you know what? Has someone read my slides? Because that's actually in the notes. You might have a bias towards this. You might be too close to the problem to actually recognize what it is. And putting the fix first doesn't give you a chance to drill into the real problem. You might just have the immediate problem. Exactly. And what the immediate problem, what's happening now, might not actually be what has caused the problem in the first place. That might be a symptom rather than actually the problem. You probably not a good analogy to use right now. Lovely. And if you need any questions, and if you think of any questions, please do put them in the Q&A as Ella's just popped in there, because we do want to be able to answer some of your questions towards the end. So absolutely, how to empathize, very important. So keep an open mind. Minds work best, like parachutes, work best when they're open. Challenges within challenges. By that, it means the main challenge might not be what is actually causing the problem. So have a look at those things and break them down into little chunks. And one of the things I say when I'm training often is that people who think we're in big pictures, that big picture thinking, well, it's not a big picture. A big picture is a mosaic of all the little pictures you've taken on the way. So, dig it down, because that big picture has probably got lots of little things, lots of little pictures that have made it happen. So, yeah, get into it. Start challenging the challenges. So you've hit this, what is causing that? And, dig down into it. And go further with questions. Questions are so important. We're often taught how to listen, and we talk about these questions, the importance of questioning. And you need to question yourself, and you need to be able to constructively question others. So if someone says something, I really don't like that, well, that's a statement. That's not adding any value. What you can ask is, all right, well, why? Give me 5 reasons why you don't like that. Or I don't think this is going to work. Okay, 5 reasons why it doesn't work. What? And they'll go, well, because of this, 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 and this. And suddenly you've identified things that can grow, rather than just saying, oh, it doesn't work. All right, we'll give up, which often happens. Don't work, don't like it. Okay, well, why? What are the barriers? What's causing you a problem? Well, it's because of this, this, and this, and this. And then you've got things you can address, you can overcome, and suddenly that problem is no longer there. But critically, and it goes back to one of the comments earlier we had earlier on, is that you might not be the expert in this problem. You can try and make yourself an expert, but who else in your organization, who else in your network can actually lend their voice to that to fill any gaps that you have? That's the inclusivity of this. It's very rarely something you do on your own. It's something you do with other people. So can you include a broader and more inclusive perspective in terms of how people interact with it? But yeah, someone also mentioned unconscious bias. You might be too close to the problem. It might be your baby. I get this a lot with businesses. They look at their businesses through, I'm a business advisor, they look at it through rose-colored spectacles, and sometimes they need someone from the outside just to say, have you thought about this? And it can make a big difference. So yeah, go further with those questions, and also think about who is out there that might be missing and be able to add value to all of this for you. Okay, fantastic. So moving on to the next slide. So this is about using empathy. Really important, because we are empathetic. Human beings are by their very nature empathetic. We know empathy. We know when people around us are feeling a bit down, for instance. But what we need to do is to think about how we identify these challenges. So I'm going to do a little exercise. And again, we've got 2 more exercises to think about here. This COVID-19 thing that's going on at the moment, and our careers or our businesses. I'm a freelancer. Over the last 6 weeks, things have changed incredibly for me. Identify the challenges. Now, again, just type something into the chat, but don't necessarily hit go yet. But don't filter yourself. This is important. This is about quantity, not quality. When you're starting this thing, it's about getting as many ideas on the table as possible and treating all of those ideas sensibly and equally. Some of those ideas won't work. Some of those ideas will move away because we go through that process we just talked about, the 5 whys. But critically, we want anything. So don't filter the challenges that you or your business or your career are facing in the current area. And what we're going to do is, with design thinking, it's a process of finding the best possible idea to develop. So you've got 2 minutes. I think some of you are probably already going, so I'll give you 1 minute now, because I'd imagine you're typing whilst I've been gabbling on, to put as many of these in as possible. So when I say go, I just want you to hit go, and we'll see all of the things that you are coming up with. And I'll have some nice peppermint tea whilst we go. Very important to hydrate when you do things like this. Okay. So, go. Hit go. Excellent. Everyone thinking this is a challenge. Got lack of clear communication channels. Absolutely. It's really hard right now. Yeah. So thanks for that. Sudden change, unexpected. Absolutely. People don't always like change. Can't travel to visit family. Absolutely. It was my mum's 82nd birthday on Tuesday. We managed to get her onto Zoom in the end and have a chat with her on Zoom. I was unemployed this bite started. Absolutely. Yes. And people are finding that at the moment, either it's difficult to find work or freelancers such as myself are finding an awful lot of work going. Missing family, a personal one. What to do when the government says we can come out of lockdown? Absolutely. Hiring freeze. We've got uncertainty of future career and financial implications. Yeah, lost your job, Mena. Sorry about that. Absolutely devastating situation at the moment. But again, perhaps we can be thinking creatively about other ways we can access work. Business uncertainty. Absolutely. So, loads of things. Stress when IT lets me down. Nothing face to face. We miss people. Yeah. The world we're used to is not likely to be the same again. That is very profound, actually, but you're absolutely right. You know, one of the things is what happens when we come out of lockdown. Do we suddenly all go back to the pub, go to restaurants? I don't know what's going to happen there. You know, will we still be going to cinemas and theatres amongst thousands of people, or will there be an element of change? So what we've got an opportunity to do during this situation is to plan for that change and say design thinking is one of the ways of doing it. But I've got lack of clear communication channels. And that is, you know, one of the things that we're all having to adapt to. You know, businesses and organizations now using things like Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Slack, G Suite, all of these things that we're now using that we weren't necessarily using before. Like I said, six different webinar platforms and 5 different communication platforms I'm using for all the organizations I work with currently. So I get that, absolutely. So what we want to do for the next bit is, if I just get my notes back up again, and this is an empathy toolkit. So this is a persona. So if we take kind of communication, now you can either think broadly in terms of your clients, or you can think internally in terms of your colleagues, or you could think of, you know, people you're trying to contact, businesses you might be contacting, and how you might be able to contact them. And we're going to spend just a short period of time doing this. But this is the empathy. This is the designing the problem around the person, rather than, you know, this is the function, not the form. This is making a bridge people walk over without falling off, rather than one that's going to look lovely. So this is a persona. The name, age, occupation, hobbies, dislikes, likes that people are going to be involved with, whether it's someone you're working with or a group of people you're working with or a customer. Think about their daily routine. So what is the daily routine? What do they do and where do they do it? When does their routine change, or how has their routine changed considering where we are now? And do they have the same routine every day, or are they going to be moving around and changing? And the empathy map, importantly, is the what do they think, feel, hear, see, say, and do. And what we're trying to do is to create a persona, a person that we can then solve a problem for. So I would like you to think about that in terms of communication. You know, people who are resistant to change, people who might be, older people who are in your organization, or, you know, like my mum who's 82 that we Zoomed the other day. How might we figure out who they are, what they do, what they're saying, what they're thinking, so we can then design a solution to the problem. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. Any problems, just pop a note in the slides, in the chat, and we can help you out. Yes, man, I think it will pass. After the Black Plague, the Renaissance took place. Well, you know, you find that I think there's a huge amount of creativity. You only have to look at the number of TikToks out there at the moment to know the amount of creativity that's going on right now. Excellent, but thank you for that. It's a lovely insight there, Mina. Yeah, and again, we've got to think positively about what we're doing here. So the empathy toolkit is there, okay? What we want to do with that now if I just get my slides up so I can change the slides, is to think of a timeline. Okay, a day in the life of this person. You can now. We're going to look at a persona journey. On this occasion, we're going to have the user persona as you, so you can put yourself into this area. Offer ideas about typical days. What do you do? So, what time do you wake up? What do you do when you wake up? Now, has that changed, actually? Now, do you wake up in the morning and immediately jump out of bed, go downstairs, do Joe Wick's YouTube channel and have a hearty breakfast, go for your one allowed walk and then get on with work? Or do you wake up in the morning and have a little look at Facebook for 20 minutes before you get out of bed, or an hour or 4 hours, depending on what you're doing? Because these days in the lives will help us understand more about the people we're trying to communicate with. So what might be the disruption? How might this day in the life be changing as a result of where we find ourselves at the moment? This is to raise our awareness in terms of the people that we deal with. So I'm going to give you a few minutes. So think about what type of person is affected by this lack of communication or whatever problem you're trying to experience. Where are they, and how are you going to create something that meets their needs? Stop the bridge from wobbling, essentially. Okay. Snooze alarm 5 times. Yeah. So how have these routines been impacted by COVID-19? My routine is massively different now. I used to spend 4 or 5 days, 3-4 days a week training in rooms with people or delivering seminars and conferences to people, not speaking to a webcam and not being able to see anybody I'm training. It's very weird. My routine is massively different. Discuss with all your contacts on social media if they're on. Absolutely. Any others? Daily team check-in. That is lovely. I haven't got your name there because there's only a few people's got their names coming up. Absolutely. Those little moments, they're called the water cooler moments or the coffee machine moments that we now miss, particularly if people are on their own. It's just bringing people together. Absolutely. Keep some structure. Brilliant. Yes. Ensure working days. Yes. I was talking to this about my wife earlier on today. The fact is, when you're at home, there are 2 things that will happen. You'll either work too hard because there is no home time, or you won't work as hard because it's confusing. Absolutely. Lunchtime walk in the park. Very, very nice indeed. Days got busier. I'm using the time to connect with webinars that weren't around before the pandemic. Brilliant. A great time for training and learning, actually. I spent an entire morning yesterday catching up on my CPD. Being more visible with your workload to those interactions, opinions, feedbacks you often miss in the office. Yeah, because we do miss it. You don't realise how much you miss your colleagues until they're not there. You might find Julian in the accounts office really irritating, but when he's not there all the time, absolutely. What a great use of time. Keep an eye on free webinars are offering that coming out. Absolutely. I've done a few myself. I deliver them myself, but I've also done a few myself and sat in at one. I was doing one just before I came here. Yes, swallowing my pride, being furloughed and making sure to check in with work updates. Yeah, you are still part of it. You still want to be part of it. And you want to feel that when this finishes, you've got somewhere to go. Brilliant. So these impacts are things that are very individual. And this is something that empathy is all about, because there is no one solution, one fit all solution. And we have to be mindful of how we do that. Perfect. Thank you very much for that. And again, yoga in the lounge after work. Fantastic. I tell you something, these yoga people and Pilates people, my wife's doing Pilates classes. My kids are doing their dance classes via Zoom. It's amazing. So what we want to think about here is how we're going to now move forward with this. The empathy is very important. So next steps, how to continue this journey in terms of design thinking. We've talked about empathy, and I think empathy right now is very important because people are going through changes and they come up with ideas. You've got to have that open mind. It is very, very easy to crush creativity. You've got that person, you're asking them to be creative, you're asking them to use methods they've never used before. They're going to find it difficult. And if they come up with an idea that is a bit off-piste or a little bit, out there, and someone sneers or rolls their eyes, they're never going to contribute again, which is why it's important to have no filters. And then that person, you can go through the 5 whys. Brilliant, thank you for that. Give me 5 reasons why you think that's going to be useful. And ultimately, they'll get to a point where they can see that that is not an idea that's viable, but they've gone through a process where they felt included, their opinions have been valued, and that encourages them to go again. And next time they'll understand the process, and you'll find that their ideas get better and better and better. But you can kill creativity with a sneer. That's all it takes. So that open-mindedness, inclusiveness is important. But once you've identified that problem, once you've got into the problem, identified the root of it, that's when we start thinking about solutions. So you go to define the problem, you ideate around that problem. You say, okay, we've identified the problem. These are the layers that we've discovered. How do we overcome it? And that is important to have that open-mindedness, that sense of just no rules, good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's get it in, no filters. And then what you do is you look at those things, you work through the ones that are going to work, you ask your questions, and then you prototype solutions. And once you've got that prototype solution, your minimum viable product, the thing that you know is going to work at the very base level, you can then start testing it. And you go out and test it and you see how it works. And if it works, brilliant, but bring it back to the empathize and start going in there and saying what works, why is it working, what can we do better? Let's define what's working, because it's not just about problems, it's about, you know, if something's working, let's try and make it work better. So define, ideate, prototype, test, come back to empathize. If something doesn't work, go straight back to the empathize, go straight into the problem, no solutions, define what wasn't working, ideate, prototype, test. And it becomes this beautifully self-fulfilling prophecy. It is really fantastic. And once you get that energy flowing within a team of people, and I say I have experienced this myself, it is phenomenal. And you can achieve so much. It is really good. And then people feel included. And particularly in these times where people might feel isolated, they want to feel valued. They want to know that their input is appreciated, that they are helping the business move forward, and that they have some structure. They have some things going on in their lives which they can hold on to, particularly in these very challenging times. So get slides up again. That is all the stuff we've got time to cover today. We really just wanted to give a high level idea and get into this idea of empathy because it is so important. Obviously, one of the things that the Upskill Digital offers is virtual academy courses. One of those, funny enough, is about remote design thinking, which is a full-on course that goes through all 5 processes and is very practical. And you will all, because you've attended today, get a 50% discount on any of the online training that Upskill Digital is offering. So you've got leading remote working, which is incredibly important at the moment, remote thinking, and AI for leaders. So that would be fascinating for people wanting to get a little bit deeper into what is going on. So please do get in touch with this, and they're going to be very valuable. It's a perfect time to be training. Please, 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 there will be the link, I believe, going into the chat now for this feedback form. Yep, there it is. Thank you, Donatus. If you can click on that live design thinking feedback form, we'd love to know what your feedback is. Have you enjoyed the session? You know, what was good about it? What was wrong about it? Hey, we can do some design thinking, and you know, we can make sure that this moves forward. And absolutely, it's popped up on your screen now. Please complete this short survey. And whilst you're doing that, I will have a little look at the Q&A section and see what we have. So I'll just have to dismiss that one for a moment. So if you have any questions about what we've been talking about for the last few moments, please do pop any questions in there. I'll do my best to answer them for you. I'll give a couple of minutes for people's typing fingers to get going. Oh, that's a really, really good question. Thank you for that. How do you introduce design thinking methodology in an environment that's stuck in the old ways? Gosh, I feel your pain if you're talking about this from personal experience. I feel your pain because I have been there. Yeah, absolutely. I would, it's difficult. It is difficult. One of the things that I would suggest, there is a methodology called the Law of Diffusion of Innovation, and I would recommend anyone to watch Simon Sinek's TED Talk called How Great Leaders Inspire Action. Within organizations, you will have people who don't like change and who are change resistant. And that could be for many different reasons. They could just be grumpy, or it could be that they fear change. that they've been overlooked in the past. They feel cynical about it, but there will be people in the organization who are on your side. They are called the early adopters. The law of diffusion of innovation is a model for sales, marketing, change management, all sorts of things. What you will do is to try and fix on those people who do get what you do. There will be people in the organization. Hopefully it won't be an organization that's wholly stuck in its ways. And you get those people on board, and they will then bring other people on board, because if you as a leader go in and say, this is what we want to do, it's difficult. It's like any marketing. You know, it's much better to get other people to say how good your product is than your product itself. So it could be that you want to get into those groups of people who are absolutely into it, and they spread that throughout other people because people trust them more than they trust you. The other thing is to get this design thinking process. Don't call it design thinking. You know, the second you give it a label, it might be, you know, it's design thinking, but don't go to, you know, Agnes, who's been a member of the team for 50 years and doesn't like change, and say, we're going to do a design thinking exercise. What you do is you get people together and say, we've got this problem. I would love your ideas on how that might have occurred. Let's have a look at the problem. So you include them. So you don't frame it as a new methodology. You frame it as something that is, you know, I value your opinion. How can you help me? And they basically will get involved in that methodology, hopefully without even realizing that you've introduced them to a new methodology. You know, in many cases, you see things like design thinking, critical thinking, you go, oh, I've been doing that for years. So yeah, identify those people who are on your side and can spread the goodwill, or don't call it design thinking, don't call it a new methodology. Bring it in by appreciating people's input. We've got this problem. You, Agnes, you've been working here for 50 years. We'd love to know what you think is going wrong here. And what you do then is you create that process without them actually knowing they're a part of the process. Do you think the private sector or the public sector embraces design thinking better? Gosh, that is a big question, actually, and I don't know. I have worked, I work for myself now and work for other organizations, and I worked for a non-for-profit organization, and I worked for them for 8.5 years. So they certainly did embrace design thinking. Whereas when I was working for large organizations, which again was in the 2010s, so things have moved on. They were a little bit more rigid, a little bit more linear, but I had, you know, I was working for banks who tend to, at that time, were a little bit more forward thinking. So I honestly don't know. The question is, should they all be adopting it? Absolutely. I would suggest probably you're going to be looking at industries and innovative industries that are using it now because it seems to appeal to them more. But the whole point is design thinking is something that should be implemented in many businesses, in all businesses, because it's a way of bringing innovation into business. So Fred, I don't have a firm answer for that. I would imagine probably it's the private sector, but I have no statistics to back that up at all. Any other questions? And before I wrap everything up for today. So, okay, well, I think now, thank you very much for your questions. Thank you very much for your input. Now is as good a time to wrap up. Thank you very much for attending the session today. I hope you found it useful and informative. If you have any questions, please do get in touch with Upskill Digital. You can go to the website, or you can contact them using the links that we've had available today. It is important that we kind of come together in these times, and Upskill Digital is there to help you if you need any digital transformational support for your businesses. Thanks for attending. I hope to see you at other seminars. Have a fabulous afternoon. Stay well, stay safe, and I hope to speak to you soon. Bye-bye.